Hi, this is Carol Peugeot from Innovate Training, and welcome 2021. Yay, this is our first session of this year. So this is from the classroom to the kitchen nook. This is our 15th session. Now, as I mentioned last week I mentioned that we were going to do some math shortcuts, but I kind of changed it up because what I want to do is I want to go over some basics before we get into the shortcuts, because I think it's important that we don't skip over some basics. And what I want you to do is, if you are a math whiz, stay with us and keep with us, and if I have forgotten something or if there's something that you think I should add, put it down kindly in the comments. Okay? So stay with us if you're a math whiz. Just if you're not, then stay with us too. Because what this is meant to do is, some of us, and again, I'm one of them, who struggled during my junior high and high school years, and some of my college, with some math. I struggled with it. So there were some gaps. And I think some of these gaps are some of the areas I'm going to start to cover. I can't cover them all in one session. There's just no way. I'd be doing you a disservice. So I'm going to do a couple things today. And then a little later on, maybe not next week, but later on, we'll do some more. Okay? But before we get into that, I want to do a little review from last week. Remember what we talked about last week?
Cross multiplication.
Well, what was that about?
Finding percentages.
Finding percentages. Remember, I showed you a formula, and that formula would give you the information you needed regardless of what information was missing. So, using that formula, I'm going to give you 3 questions. And I want you to use that formula and find your answer to these questions. Put your answers down in the comments. And I will go over these next week. Okay? Now, those of you who do this, please do not correct other people in the comments. Let me do that, because I'm going to turn it into a teaching opportunity, and I really want to avoid shaming or embarrassing people. So again, let me do the correction. If you have a different answer, just put that answer in the comments, but don't directly correct somebody else. Okay? You do me that favor? All right, that's me as a teacher asking. That's what I would ask my students to do. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to do the first review question. So here we go. The first question. This is where we need to find the percentage of the part. So I took a test with 214 questions. I missed 27 questions. What's going to be my percent? What percent did I get on this test? If every question is worth only 1 point. So every question has to be worth the same points in order for this to work. So I'll do the formula for you, but I'm not going to work it. I want you to do that at home. So first of all, if I missed 27 questions, how many did I get correct? That's going to be important. You don't want to do the 27. I didn't get 27 correct. How many did I get correct? So what do? You got to subtract the 27 from the 214, which means I got 187 questions correct. 187 over 214. So this is how many I got correct. This is how many are on the test. Okay? What's missing? Again, I know it's a percent, because that's what we said, percent, right? This is the information missing. So using the formula that we talked about last week, what is the answer to this question? Again, put it down in the comments. So remember, what do? Cross multiply and then divide by what's remaining. Okay? Okay, number 2. Number 2, I need to find the part. I have the percent and I have the whole. So I need 21.25% for a down payment to finance a car costing $24,600. Okay? So using that formula, the same formula we used, we're going to put the whole, which is the $24,600, and then the percent, 21.25 over 100. Make sure you put that percent, that decimal point in there. That's important. Otherwise, your numbers are going to be off. Okay? And then what's missing is the part. All right? Again, cross multiply. So when you multiply this, you're going to multiply you're going to multiply 24,600 by 21.25. And then divide by the remaining number. Okay, third question. This one is where we need to find the whole. So, my husband receives a commission check of $5,300. He is paid 28% of his total sales. So, if he received a check for $5,300 and he is paid 28%, what would be his total sales that he made? All right? So, let's do the formula. So we have the part, which is the 5,300. We have the percent, 28 over 100. What's missing is the whole. Okay? So, cross it over, sorry. Cross multiply and then divide. Okay? Okay, so make sure that you do those review questions. Again, put your answers down in the comments and watch next week so that I'll go over the answers. And again, please do not do any correcting of somebody else's answer. So let me do that. Again, I don't want to shame anybody and I don't want to embarrass anybody. It's not about that. I'm still learning things. There's things that you know that I probably don't know. And again, there's things that my husband knows that I don't know. So we're all learning day by day. So again, these are things that were possible gaps in some of our learning or some of our education. And again, I knew I had some gaps too by the time I finished high school. So, in the answers that you did in the previous 3 questions, I want you to round to the nearest hundredth spot. If you have one of those calculators that can go on forever with numbers, you need to round this down. So, the 100th spot. So what is the 100th? It's not 100, it's 100th with a TH at the end. So what that means is it is the second place that is right of the decimal point. And we're going to go over the decimal place in just a few minutes. But right now I want you to just remember that that's what that is. So, if you have a percent, so let's say you're working with a percent and your calculator gives you 8.793481. And you want to round to the nearest 100th spot. So remember, this is the 100th spot. Well, if you remember correctly, when we talked about rounding last week a little bit, if this number that's on the right of it is 5 or more, what happens to this number? This number would go up. Well, what would happen if this turned to 10? Then we would have to carry that over to the next number. So this would end up being 89.80. But since it's less than 5, what happens to these numbers? This number stays the same and these just drop out. Okay? So again, I'll use that other example. If this was 7981, what would happen here, this would have to turn to 10, but I would have to carry over to this number, so this would go to 0, these would drop out, this would go to 0, and this would have to go to, that's a lousy 8. So it'd be 89.80. Okay? So down here, do this. Take your calculator and divide 100 by 3. What you're going to get, depending on what type of calculator you have, you're going to get a 33.3333333, and it's going to go on for eternity. It will go on for eternity because there's no place to stop. It'll go around the world and around and around and around. Yes?
Will your calculator blow up?
No, your calculator won't blow up. It will just cut it off where there's no more room for the decimal, for the digit. So we're going to round it down to the 100th spot. So 100 divided by 3 is 33.33, since that was a 3 and less than 5. Okay? So in this case, 674.3333, the 100th spot is right here, right? This is less than 5, so what happens to these two numbers? They drop off, right? So it's 674.33. Now, this number, 460.8999, and I want to round it to the 100th spot. So what happens to that?
The 9 goes to a 0.
That goes to a 0. These drop off, right? This
Right.
goes to a 0.
And then you have to carry over a 1.
And I carry this over to the
Next spot.
next spot, which makes this 9.
9.90.
Make that neater. 0.90. Okay? So that's rounding. Anytime you round when it comes to a number, especially when it's money, you want to round to the 100th spot. Because this is the $1 spot, this is the ones column, this is the tenths column, and this is the hundredths column. And we're going to talk about that in the next in a few minutes. Okay? So that's rounding. Okay, the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the value placeholders here. The decimal point is right here, and anything to the right of the decimal is a less than a whole number. So these are the tenths, and notice it says tens with a TH at the end. Hundreds with a TH. Hundredths column. Sometimes it's hard to just differentiate between when I say hundreds or hundredths column. So I want you to understand that. Thousandths, and this is the 10,000ths column. And then as we go to the left of the decimal point, we have the ones, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, and the 10,000ths is what we're used to. So it goes on and on. It doesn't stop there. We would go on to the 100,000ths, the millions column, and then over here, this way would be the 100,000ths column, and then the millionths column, and then the so on and so forth, where we get into the billions. So we're not going to go that far, but I just wanted you to be aware, and I'm going to include this graphic. If you go to my website, you'll be able to download this graphic where it has this decimal system.
There'll be a link in the video.
There'll be a link in the video down below. Okay? Okay, the last thing we're going to do today is we're going to do averaging. I'm going to show you how to do an average. So, Mrs. Pajot, that's me, my class took a test. And I had, at this point in time, I had 8 students who had the following grades. So the grades are listed here: 88, 45, 96, 68, 70, 77, 100, and 100. I want to know what the average grade is. And this is kind of how I grade myself. At the end of the week, I do an average of my students' grades to determine how well I taught the material. Because again, as a teacher, I want to make sure that my students are understanding. And I understand that there's some students who are going to, who are not going to do so well because maybe they didn't study. But if my average is really low, then that tells me that I'm not getting through, so even the brighter students aren't quite getting it. Or even the ones, I don't want to say brighter students, the ones who work hard are not quite getting it, or the ones who normally would. So I grade myself. So here's how we do the average. You take you count how many parts there are. In this case, there's 8 parts. And then what you need to do is you need to add all these together. The 88, so you take your handy-dandy calculator. 88 plus 45 plus 96 plus 68 plus 70 plus 77 plus 100 plus 100. And then you take that and divide it by how many there were. There were 8. So I'm going to take that number, which I got 644, and I divide that by 8. And that gives me 80.5%. Okay? So on average, the class got a low B. I would consider this myself. If I saw this, I would probably say, not so good. I would want to see for me as a teacher, and I'm not judging anybody else as a teacher, I'm judging myself as a teacher. I would want to see this probably in the 90th percentile or the upper 80th percentiles. So again, it depends on the subject too, and it depends on what type of week we've had. So that's how to average. You take the total amount of what you have. So let's say, for instance, this is not score. Let's say, for instance, this is a cost. This is a cost of a bowling ball. I don't know. And the bowling ball, these are what they cost in 8 different stores. So you'd add it together, boom, divide by 8. So the average cost is $80.50. Well, that's it for this week, session 15. Join me next week. We'll do some more. If you could think of any that I haven't done yet that you think you'd like me to go over, please put that down in the comments. I'd love to hear about it, and I'll do another one of these. So this is Carol Peugeot from Innovate Training. This is From the Classroom to the Kitchen Nook, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Don't forget to like, subscribe,